Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to put in the Alpha Smith Wesson M&P Trigger from Timney. They were kind enough to send this out to me. We're going to put it in my M&P 2.0 Compact. We are safe and clear. Now before we get started on this, I did do a measurement on this trigger as it was. 10 poles, we came in at 3 pounds, 12 ounces with this trigger. So there is your trigger action stock from the factory. We got 3 pounds, 12 ounces. Got a pretty solid reset, tactile and audible on it. So I'm going to break this down, get the new trigger in. And then to break down the M&P 2.0, just pull it back, lock the slide, drop your takedown lever. That comes right off of there. So trigger's going to go in here, but we do have parts that need to go in here. So we're going to take the Swamp Fox Liberty off of here, and I do have a different optic that I'll be putting back on when I put it all back together. So let's do that. And I'm just using the Swamp Fox tool on this. When you guys are putting your optics on here, you don't need to put a whole lot of torque on these things. You gotta get them tight and then give them like just a little snug on there. Don't crank them down, really tighten them down on there, because that's how you end up with problems. You may end up shearing your screws putting them in there. This is all you need to put those in. Just put them in, tighten them down snug, give them just a tiniest little tweak on them to torque them in. So we've got that on, or off rather. We've got our armor plate from Smith Wesson. We're going to end up putting a Dr. Cut on there from Crimson Trace. So I'm going to set this one over to the side. Now as far as what's in the package here, they actually send you a screwdriver and a punch for installation on that. We've got a pin here. I believe that is just a slave pin to hold your trigger in until you drive your regular pin back through. We've got the trigger that we're looking at, and it is hinged, but it does not have that big old hook in it like the Smith & Wesson trigger does. So that's going to feel a little better than that Smith & Wesson trigger. And here we've got our safety plunger that we're going to be changing out in the slide. And I believe our Sear here that we're going to be changing out in the frame. Then of course we have our instructions. If you like this video, please hit that like button down below. While you're doing that, why don't you consider just going over just an inch or so and hitting that subscribe button and hit the bell so that you're notified every time I put out a new video. All right, now the first thing we're going to do is remove our locking block pins there. And we're going to end up taking out our trigger housing pin back here. So as we do with any of them, just easy taps. You don't want to actually wail on this thing. If you run into anything that's keeping them from coming out, then adjust and reassess. There's our front one on the locking block here. Make sure that our lever is not in the way of our rear one. That dropped right out nice and easy. And of course we're going to do our trigger housing pin back here. Drop that one out. So now we just got to get our locking block and our trigger housing out. So just using the punch to lift up on them a little bit. Give myself some room to pull them out. Guessing that's where our little alignment pin comes in here, is that we're going to put it together with our alignment pin going through the spring there, and when we drive our locking block pin through, it'll drive this little alignment pin out the trigger, but I'm sure we still need to get our housing out here. So there we go. I said, don't beat on anything here. Just make sure that you're taking your time and taking it easy so that you're not really torquing anything on here. All right, now we're going to use our provided punch, a small one here, to drive out our pin from our trigger. There is our old trigger. Now here we take the provided hex key and the little screwdriver that they give us. I'm going to back out our pin here. There we go, and you can see the silver in there. That's our pin. So then we take our trigger bar here, get it in there, try and get our holes lined up. Just tighten our screw through the trigger bar until we're completely in there. And there we've got our new trigger put onto our trigger bar. Then we take our slide lock here. This is where we're going to use our alignment pin. And we're going to use our trigger spring here. Our trigger spring. You can see we've got our little hole there. So we're going to go through that. And we want to make sure that we're going this is what happens when you have absolutely no dexterity. Make sure we're going through there, through our spring, and through to the other side there. So this will hold it all together while we put it into the back into the gun. And then when we drive our locking block pins through, that will knock out that alignment pin, and everything will be in there and aligned. And that should be our trigger ready to go back in when we do the rest of the upgrade here. So the other upgrade here is going to be on our Sear, and then of course we're going to have to change out the safety plunger on there. So with our Sear here, we've got our pin. Looks to me like our pin is going to drive from this side out. So we're going to keep our finger over the top of the Sear here so it doesn't go flying, because that is under spring tension. Trying to see how far we have to come out here. Well, there's the whole thing is the Sear there. So we're going to have to come all the way out here. So that everything is loose on there. There we are under spring tension. So like I said, keep your finger over the top of it. So yes, that kind of takes some of your view away from it, but there is our Sear that came out just like that. Here is the new one that's going to go in. As you can see, there is a little bit of difference between the two of them here. So you're going to take your Sear, push it back down there, and we've got our pin Gonna have to wiggle everything around, get it lined up. Let's try that without the lever in there. See if we can have a little better luck with it. And then we'll put the lever through. There we go. Sometimes you just need to give it a little tap. Just a little love tap. You don't need to be angry about it. Just a little bit of vibration to move things around. We're back through the Sear lever there. There we go. It's our new Sear our new Sear is in there. Get our pin all the way through. And we just sit in there like that. So we should be able to now put our frame back together. You can see here we've got our little alignment grooves on there. Get those in your correct spots, and hopefully your housing will drop right in, or it can be completely disagreeable. So here we go, we've got our housing in, got the new trigger in there. Let's put the locking block in first. That way we keep our trigger from flying out on us. So there's our locking block. On the Smith & Wesson, the locking block pin on this side sticks out a little bit, and you can see the mark there in the takedown lever. So it does not sit flush over here. It actually sits a little back on that side. And then this one actually has a flat on it. So what we're doing here, we're going to drive this one through, and then that one should drive our line pin out. And our locking block is back in. And then, of course, we just put the one back here in our trigger housing. As I said before, if it doesn't go, adjust and reassess. And we actually drove in behind it. So, drive that one back out. All right, now the trigger housing, Sear housing, whatever you want to call it, actually just took a little tap on it to make sure that it was seated completely, because it was driving this pin in behind it and then popping it up. So there's our frame put back together. Set that over there. All right, guys, so we finished with the frame portion of it. We're going to do the slide portion, which is putting in your new safety plunger. First thing you're going to do here is take out your guide rod and your barrel. Then we have to take off our rear plate here. So they tell you to use a flat screwdriver on here, but I just use my Glock tool. We've got that little white part down there. You just take and you push down on that, and then your back plate should slide right off. And these are a little different than a Glock. If it was a Glock, you could just pull this striker assembly right out. Here you actually have to push down the safety plunger, and then you can take your striker assembly out. Now, to get that out, my directions are going to be a little bit different from Timney's, because Timney has you taking out the set screw here in your sights and taking the sights out. We have the Optic ready slide here. So actually, to get to our safety plunger is right under here. So luckily that Timney screwdriver or hex head that they sent with it is the same size here. As you can see, we've got our spring on the bottom of that. We got our screw and our little plate here, and we just tip it over and our safety plunger comes out. Then we take our new one here from Timney, put that one in, replace our screw and our plate, or our spring and our plate, push them down here. Just tighten our screw up. Then we take our striker assembly, put it back in. We took it out, we had to push it down so we could get it out. So now we're going to get it back in there. We've got our rear plate on here, putting them back in just like anything else. You got to push that down, get it out of the way so you can put your rear plate back on. So we got everything back together. Make sure we got some tension on there. We've got spring there. Take our barrel, our guide rod, put them back in there. Back together. Test our function on it. Seem to be functioning well. We don't have any striker unless we've cocked the pistol. And yeah, that feels a lot better than that factory one in there. So there's our install of the Timney Alpha Smith Wesson M&P trigger. Now let's take a look at it and see what kind of trigger pull we got on it. There we go, just under 2 pounds with the Timney trigger on there for 10 pulls. It's got a nice audible reset on it. Comes out a little bit less, I'd say, than the factory did. We got our take up here. That's a light trigger. That's something you're going to enjoy. Put that Alpha competition trigger into your Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0. Now this was a little more involved than the Glock trigger install, but we didn't have any issue with, I had to give you pictures of where the screw lines up. The biggest thing on it as far as these was making sure that you run your pin through that spring there, and they give you the pin to do it that is shorter, just to hold everything together and align it so you can drive your locking block pins through. The rear locking block on the Smith & Wesson is a little bit more of a pain in the ass to get out than the Glocks are, and a little bit more of a pain in the ass to get back in than the Glocks are, but it wasn't horrible. Got our little plugs there because they use the same frame for safeties and non-safeties, but I like it. I like that in there. I would imagine you can tune the weight a little bit if you want to by not changing out your safety plunger there, maybe not changing the Sear on there. That would be something you'd have to check with Timney on with that, or if it's all meant to be together as one unit and you can't adjust the weight like you can on the Glock trigger. So there you go. Hope this was helpful for you guys that are going to be out there doing the Timney trigger into your M&P 2.0. Have to get out there and test this trigger. I do have the Crimson Trace with the Dr. Cut that's going to go on top of this, and that Swamp Fox that's going to end up going back into inventory and going something else, I'm sure, that'll come around. So Thanks for watching, guys.